listening to Awake in Relationship, a podcast about intimacy, community, and culture in a time of great change, with Silas Rose.
Greetings, dear listener. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to Awake in Relationship. My name is Silas Rose. So I don't think I'm being out of step in saying that after 8 months of a global pandemic, many of us are feeling the need for a release. In all cultures and in all times, music and dance have fulfilled that role as a means to elevate the spirit, move through emotional blocks, and unify people in difficult times. In this episode of Awake in Relationship, I speak with Shauna Devlin, an ecstatic dance facilitator and the founder of Dance Your Ability, about the healing power of dance as a relational practice. We also talk about how Shauna is making the joy of dance available to those who have been traditionally excluded due to age or ability. Only recently have I really come to relate to dancing as a form of practice, similar to meditation or yoga. So it's really great to kind of dive deeper into the philosophy behind conscious dance with Shauna during this interview. Just a quick note to the listener, this episode is recorded in 2 segments, mostly due to a technical error with my recorder back in February, so that tends to happen as I'm discovering as a new podcaster. If you're a lover of dance, I think you're really going to enjoy what Shauna has to share, so please stay tuned. Good afternoon, Shauna.
Hi.
Yeah, great to be here with you. So, for those that are perhaps kind of new to the whole ecstatic dance world, how would you define ecstatic dance or conscious dance?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Both conscious and ecstatic dance are following the idea that there's an invitation to move one's body as one sees fit, or that feels good in that moment, responding to the music that's being played. And generally, you're gonna move how you would if you were sort of by yourself without anyone judging, if that makes sense. So there's not going to be any lessons of how to move your body or beats to follow or counting to happen. There's no left and right. It's just free. So free movement, free creative movement. And even that can have a little bit of weight to it. It's really one of those things that you almost have to experience to comprehend. If you were to walk in off the street into a room of conscious dance or ecstatic dance, you might think you've walked into, a lunatic asylum or something, because it looks pretty different. But once you're there, generally people, because there's a lot of nervousness to enter a room, like what, move my body freely? Like that seems absurd to a lot of people or very edgy. And so often what happens is someone will walk into the room and the music's going to be good, hopefully. It's the job of the DJ or the facilitator to research and search and find really great tracks that are going to be encouraging for movement. So generally a person will come in with a lot of nerves or like, what is this whole thing? And then they see that everyone's just sort of moving their bodies and to the beat or offbeat and generally having a pretty good time. And then under that, there can be a lot of deep cathartic healing that happens. So that can be happening at the same time as the neighbor who's just getting a really great aerobic exercise workout. And then everything in between.
So I want to just ask you a little bit about some of your early experiences with dance. I know you spent some time in the Dominican Republic. When was that again?
I lived down there from 1989 to about 1998 or so, on and off. So sort of 18 to 28. My family was living down there, and I went and decided to stay. And at that point, I had no idea about conscious dance or ecstatic dance. I just loved to dance.
What do you think that culture taught you about dance or the power of dance?
Well, that it's a priority, and that it's just it should be part of the culture, and it doesn't have to be. So I would come back to Canada, and it would be, go to the nightclub downtown, and it was always quite dark and different, and a lot of alcohol would be around. It was a lot of based on a lot of alcohol, and I thought, and of course there's drinking in the Dominican too, but it seemed like dance was the priority, and it was partner dancing as well, so that was different, and quite beautiful, I thought, but I just saw how much dance I had in me, and how much of a desire to dance, and then looking around, and these dance floors were always packed, so. Whereas I would come back to Canada, and it would be quite depressing, actually, because I just wanted to go dance, and I wanted to be out for the sake of dancing, not for sort of the sake of some sort of pseudo connection, something. I don't know.
So what was the sort of the time period between that and kind of getting into conscious dance, and what sort of, you're, as I mentioned, we're trained by Gabrielle Roth, who started Five Rhythms. And so tell me about that transition. Yeah,
so I came back to Canada, and I moved to Salt Spring Island, and I started my family, and still unaware of dance as a means of therapy or spirituality or anything. I just missed it so desperately. So I was in this little sort of hippie lifestyle on Salt Spring, and as soon as I would get the house to myself, I would crank up whatever it would be. Often it would be Fleetwood Mac, and I would dance. And I kind of thought I was a weirdo. Like I really did. I had a lot of shame around my desire to dance. And I think for maybe women more, there is shame associated with dance. That's like the loose woman or the floozy or the flighty, the dancer is a bit flighty. So I had all that in my sort of DNA, I would say, actually, that societal conditioning. And so I had a lot of shame around my desire to dance, and then I would go out dancing sometimes if there was a gig on, but I had little children, so I really didn't go out very much like that. And then I moved to Vancouver, and I went to a performance, a Rumi recital, actually. And so we had Coleman Barks and Robert Bly on opposite sides of the stage reciting Rumi. And then there's a Persian drumming band called Zagreb, and there's, I think, like 5 of them, sort of in a semicircle. And then the other portion was an ecstatic dancer. She was called an ecstatic dancer, and her name's Banafesh Saeed. And she came onto the stage in the middle of all this with her beautiful gowns and did... She's not, I don't think she's referred to as an ecstatic dancer anymore, but so she was whirling, she had some flamenco in there, she had her own style, and I was so blown away, and because how she moved on the stage to the drum beats and the poetry, that's what would happen inside of me when I was alone in my living room dancing to Fleetwood Mac. Like that canvas that was on the stage was what was occurring inside of me. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm not a weirdo. Maybe this sort of ecstatic dance thing is a thing. It's on the postcard for this event. So that night I Googled or researched ecstatic dance, and I found Gabrielle Roth. I found the 5 Rhythms, and I ordered her books online, and I went to my first 5 Rhythms class as soon as I could, about a month later. And that very first class, I was so nervous. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I'd read the books, but they were amazing. I'd done some online stuff, but I really didn't know what it was. So I walk into a room, and there's just a bunch of weirdos, basically, like myself, moving around, just kind of moving around. And then finally the teacher spoke up, and so she was my first teacher, Soasis, and she was substituting for Bettina at the time. And once my nervousness got to move, because everyone else was moving, so I just moved. So my nervousness moved, and I moved, and next thing I know, I was swept away by the beat and the group energy. And Soasis that night played Stairway to Heaven, which is so funny. And in the middle, kind of when it gets a bit harder, I was like flipping my hair back and forth, and there was mirrors in this particular dance studio, and I caught myself in the mirror, and I made this declaration, like, I don't know what this is, but I need to do it, and I need to be a bridge so that everybody can have access to this. I just made that declaration. And then, so fast forward, that would have been like 15 years ago. So now I'm doing that. I actually get to dance with such a large variety of human beings, all of diverse, not all of them, but, pretty diverse group of people in my rooms and dance floors. And so it's pretty fantastic.
So we could probably do a whole episode just on the 5 rhythms, which I probably will do in the future.
Yeah.
I hope to. For the uninitiated, I'm just wondering if you could just briefly talk about the 5 rhythms and how that kind of leads to experience of ecstasis.
Yeah, ecstasis. Yeah, sure. So 5 Rhythms was created by Gabrielle Roth in the 70s, and I think she birthed it at Esalen in California, and she had been doing some work with Fritz Perls, and but she, from what I've heard from her books, is that wasn't her intention to create this massive dance practice thing. She was an artist at heart. She was a dancer and had saw this and came up with it, and then it just grew and grew and grew. But she also had a theater company. She had a music group. Like, she has multiple CDs and tracks, amazing work, and then this practice. But so the practice itself, if I could break it down, it's a map. It's basically a map that you follow. So the teacher will create a soundscape, music, draw on tracks that help navigate this map that has 5 rhythms. And so it's built up of a wave. So you start slow and with flowing and exploratory sort of investigation, and then you move into staccato, more fire, more percussive music, and then it peaks and you're in the rhythm of chaos. It's high energy and a release, and then once that release happens, you come out the other side of the wave, and this is sweetness of lyrical, and of course, again, the music supports this exploration, but it's very organic. You can do it without music, and hence it's a practice. It's this thing you can do in 1 minute, and then after lyrical stillness. And so there's these points, there's different rhythms, but they all follow this wave. So it's very organic. You wake up in the morning and, you check in with your body, and then you're like, oh yeah, right, Tuesday, next rhythm staccato. You get up, you make the coffee, you look at your computer, you do the thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, it's too late. Oh no, like I gotta go, chaos or whatever. And then you get in the car, you're okay, you get to work on time, and there you are. And then it starts all over again. Now you're at your desk and you're like, okay. Anyway.
Yeah, something kind of very primordial.
Yes. And so she said that, this isn't something new. We've been doing this forever, and we've been dancing forever as human beings. She just sort of put it to Western words. And she's like the godmother of conscious and ecstatic dance. There's a lot of dance in the world now, a lot of different modalities, a lot of teachings, a lot of teachers, and I think they mostly would all accredit her to this initial stepping into the modern world with her work and offering it. And so there's lots of 5 Rhythms teachers are all over the world, and I think it's a very rigorous training. You have to do a lot of years of prerequisites and a lot of workshops, a lot of classes and hours, and then the training itself is a year long, and then you get to be out in the world and offer it up as best as you can. And she did say to my group, anyway, don't quit your day job. This is about service, and that really stuck with me, because I think this idea that, this sort of, find out what your passion is and then make your living out of that. And I think there's some fallacy in that, because I think that once you put the dollar sign on something, it really shifts it. And it doesn't mean that you can't do your passion for your work, or your sort of day job, but I think that it keeps it cleaner when you know you're in service. And if you happen to make some money at it, great. But I think that that's still instilled in the Five Rhythms teachers and their training.
Last we spoke, you were talking about Gabrielle Roth's intention in terms of the vision of Five Rhythms as really an act of service rather than a job, as it were. And you've kind of taken that to the next level with starting a new nonprofit called Dance Your Ability. Tell us a little bit about that new venture and who are you serving?
Okay, I'm happy to share about that. So with some history there, Gabrielle Roth, who created the Five Rhythms movement practice, began what we would call outreach, meaning not sort of public classes, but rather where you go to the participants. So you'll go to a school or an old age home, and she was working with kids, but she was asked to work in a psych ward and to get the patients there to move. And then, of course, life took her where it took her, and she developed this practice and had a theater group, multiple CDs, musics. But where she began was just getting the body moving with these, sort of out of the periphery or in the periphery of sort of normal society. And so on her deathbed, she really made the request that the Five Rhythms practice gets back to where it began. And within the Five Rhythms organization is something called Five Rhythms Reach Out. And this is their non-for-profit section where they go out and bring the Five Rhythms to outreach communities. So who I am, I do both. I do public classes and these outreach classes. And as I was going along, I realized that I really wasn't doing the Five Rhythms practice in my outreach classes, and that what I understand is that most people won't participate in a conscious dance, ecstatic dance type of environment. If you were to say to someone, "Oh yeah, just come on down to the hall and there's great music playing and people are just dancing around like it's nobody's business," I would say, honestly, maybe 90% of people would be like, "No way. There is no way I'm going to walk into a room and just move my body with a bunch of strangers and think that that's okay or a good time." But there's, this other percentage of us that understand the benefits and can't sort of imagine our life without conscious dance or Five Rhythms or whatever practice you're doing. So this is what I saw, is that the majority of people want to be led. They are used to exercise classes. They're used to, grade 5 gym class where, for me, grade 5 gym class of Fame, the movie Fame was really big. And so this is in the 80s, early 80s. And our teacher took it upon herself to do aerobics as our gym class to the soundtrack of Fame. So anyway, the group exercise, we follow, we lead, right? There's a leader and a follower. And I have seen this. I've taught some group fitness exercise classes. And whenever I have said, "Okay, let's just, go for it," dead, a bunch of, very unmoving bodies in the space, they want me to say, "We're going to put our arms like this and then like this," and they want to copy that. So, but I understand the benefit of conscious dance meaning, intention with our movement, and we don't follow steps, we just move our bodies. So I created a program where it's fusing group exercise and conscious dance. And so basically, Dance Your Ability is tricking people into experiencing that moment in conscious dance where magic basically happens for me. And so Dance Your Ability, I take it to anyone. And we've done 2 trainings with dance durability. And so now there's a couple groups of newly trained facilitators. And unfortunately, with COVID, it all came at the same time as COVID. So there's only a couple of them that are actually out in the field doing it. Working online has its challenges, especially with things like dance and movement. And if you're trying to establish yourself, starting online isn't really the place to go. So hopefully soon they'll be out there offering up their little bit of magic with the dance durability format. Mm-hmm. And so we work with children, elderly, and within children you have especially able children, you have different age groups, and then you have elders, and the same sort of thing. There's seated elders, there's standing elders, there's those living with dementia, Alzheimer's, and that's a whole nother kit. There's people living in facilities, there's people that attend and go to public classes. And then within that, we have trauma survivors, incarcerated, people that are incarcerated, recovery, people living with recovery. And that is amazing, that kind of work, actually, because there's only so much talk therapy that one can do. And eventually this needs to be brought forward. And so it's your body that's moving through your day. And it's your body that's receiving these triggers and these temptations and things like this. So having a practice where you can actually exercise things that you're experiencing, they can hopefully move through you and you can be present. Just, meditation and things like that are great too, but there's something about sweating and doing that with other human beings, to music and beat, just very, music is our universal language, right? Everyone can feel a beat and understand a beat. So there's no dogma and there's no should or shouldn't. Your body's just responding to the beat. And who else do we? Well, obviously, especially abled adults and kids, deaf blindness. We have on our team of trainers, we have a deaf blindness teacher. And there's a very small percentage of the population that is deaf blind. But within that, if you think of an elder population, their hearing is often going. Sight can also be a challenge. So to have the awareness of deaf blindness, that and translates to like trauma. When someone's experiencing their nervous system is activated, often hearing and seeing, sight and hearing will start to decrease in effort to survive a situation. So anyway, we work with all of that.
So I assume that you have a good subwoofer.
Yeah. Yes. And I have one of my most cherished students. He is deaf. And honestly, seeing him move, you really wouldn't know it. And he will often go place his thumb just on the either by the air that comes out the backside of the speaker or on the front. When I know when there's a bassy song coming, or I'll bump up the bass a bit, and so he puts his thumb there, and he can feel that beat. And he is of Indian descent, and so we will. He's my favorite to end our time together with a nice Om. He'll lead us in an Om. So we generally, in a dance durability session, we will sort of veer away from what I would call woo-woo language or new age language. We don't bring in any sort of that, unless that is your path. Unless, as a facilitator, then you would bring in what you bring in.
So let's talk a little bit more about the benefits. What have you kind of witnessed in some of your students and participants?
The benefits of dance are sort of endless. You can break it down to the science. I'm not a scientist, so I won't speak to the scientific part. So I don't want to embarrass myself, but I do read all about this and experience it. So I'll speak to my personal experience. I'll give you one example of Kathy, who is 60 years old. But she's a 60-year-old body, but she's basically inside a 5-year-old little girl. And she's quite timid. And she will come to my classes with a big jacket on, and she'll always have her purse. And I don't think she's ever taken her jacket off, but we will hold a circle and someone will go in the middle. And so it was Kathy's turn to go in the middle. And I sort of had it was a little bit of a rap type of song, a little bit of like, some oomph to it.
Yeah.
And she got in there and I saw something in her. She'd been dancing with me for a couple of years. And I saw, a boundary. I saw her feeling her oomph, her something was there, and which I hadn't seen before. And so I said, Kathy, what's that? Give me more of that. And so she amped it up a little bit. And then I, for some reason, said, don't mess with me. And then she said, don't mess with me, with her little baby voice. I was like, what? I couldn't hear you. What did you say? Don't mess with me. I was like, good, let's see some more of that. And so here's this woman, 60 years on the planet, with she's got multiple things going on for her. I don't know exactly. It doesn't really, hit my radar. I don't need to know what you're necessarily dealing with. I just want to see you move and feel joy in your body. So I don't know what's happening with Kathy, but she owns it. And now every time as there's a good bassy song, she's in the middle and she's just like, don't mess with me. And so she, via dance, right, via being witnessed, via being in a group environment that was supportive, she's able to own some level of boundary and stand up for herself. And because she could feel it in her cells, she could feel what it was like to stand up for herself and say, that's not okay.
That for people with dementia, that'd be really kind of helpful, especially if you're not able, or a person's not able to kind of express their kind of inner world as kind of clearly as they used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, dementia, I could talk for hours about my experience there. And of course, again, science is catching up with us. I've been working with the University of Victoria with the nursing department. They're doing a study of choir, intergenerational choir, and how that affects someone living with Alzheimer's disease. So this is amazing. Like, this is what the science that's coming out is amazing. It's just so simple. So music, the singing part definitely runs parallel to the dance. And so my experience is I walk into a room at a care home, and this is a lockdown care home. This is where there's multiple locks to get out of the building, right? So these people are all living with some level of dementia. And I go in and it's pretty, it's pretty low energy and no one's really talking. So lots of people are sleeping. And I walk in and I plug in my speaker, and I'll start with a gentle song, of course, first, just to kind of warm them up often. But all the music I play is generational. And so I do a lot of research. There's, if someone is 80 years old, what were the sort of top hits when they were a teenager in their 20s? And so anyway, I will always play generational music. So then the music starts to come, and I'll, of course, go around and say, hey, how's it going? And we're going to dance now. And anyway, someone who is in a very apathetic state, is that the right way of saying, will, by the end, be singing along. They'll know every single word. And this is someone who is nonverbal. This is someone who's come from a state of non-communication. Singing along, smiling, moving their body. They're not getting up doing jumping jacks, but there's something happening. And then for about 2 hours after, they're able to have conversations. And the conversations vary. But for a family member, there's an ability to then be with that person. And it might be in a new way, it might be in an old way. But they are awake and they are experiencing something. So that, there's no pill. There is no pill for dementia. There is no medication. There is no cure. But I tell you, when the music and the invitation to move their bodies, it's amazing. Like, it's unbelievable.
I imagine the staff must love you.
Yeah, well, and this is so curious about the staff. So here you have the staff sort of in the normal quotations. I hate that word normal. I think as a society we are starting to get away from normal, but here's someone who has a job, who has a career, and they're doing their functioning okay. They, after a couple of years, a few months, sometimes they'll come in and do a little baby dance. They'll kind of come in for a second and then they'll leave. I mean, they're working, so they can only spend so much time. But no, they like seeing me walk down the hall with my speaker because, they know that some joy is going to happen, and there's a little party happening in the group room.
For the rest of us that maybe aren't struggling with a particular kind of physical or mental limit to our ability to participate, dance can often be kind of, I don't know how to say this, be more kind of a serious kind of pursuit in terms of a sense of path. And that's been kind of a new sort of revelation for me over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been involved in kind of the ecstatic dance, conscious dance world, that there's kind of a lot going on internally and externally when you're kind of working with others in a kind of dance environment. And so there's many intentions that people come to dance with. Some people it is just a social fun thing. Other people, it's about catharsis, and again, for others, it's really about exploring eros or invoking the inner god or goddess. What is it that you feel that dance can achieve that other sort of traditional paths like yoga or meditation, maybe fall short?
For me, it's about connection, and so the dance allows you to first connect with yourself, but then it pushes you to connect with other. And so it's not just the me story. Mm-hmm. So if I'm in a room dancing, I can't just do my dance. I can try. I can go in the corner. I can close my eyes. I can put my back to the group. But inevitably, I'm going to be influenced by their dance, and they are going to equally be influenced by my dance. So then here's the big reveal is that it's all accepted and it's all connected. So you're having your moment in the corner doing your own dance, but I feel that I'm aware, my body's aware of you taking some time to yourself, but you're still part of the group. And so it's so inclusive. And of course we can make barriers to make it exclusive, like, oh, I don't have the fancy dance pants, or they're better dancers than me, or look at those people, they're all connected, whatever. But eventually the beat will get us past that, and your body will surrender to the music and the beat, and then I think that's what happens. And maybe that happens in meditations and things like that. But I'm curious about you, and I trust that you're curious about me, and I also trust that you want to love me. And so if I let myself be me in an environment where you are, then, and we're dancing, there's all this ability to actually see each other.
As an introvert, one of the big challenges I've consistently come up with in my own dance is just that relational piece. I'm wondering what kind of advice you would have, feeling kind of more open and connected in a dance space.
First of all, getting to the dance place, the dance offering or whatever it is, like that's about 90% of so if the person's gotten that far, that's amazing. I often will acknowledge the courage it takes to show up for these events. And then trusting that whatever you need to do is okay. If you need to lay on the floor, if you need to stick to the sidelines, or sort of, sometimes in some classes you get asked to participate, like take a partner or whatever it is, and to do both, to say, hey, I'm not ready for that. And if you got yourself to that event, you've already pushed yourself, then to push yourself just a little, just like to get out of the comfort zone, just enough that you don't accelerate your nervous system so that you're having a full, breakdown, but just enough. It's like what happens with trauma in the body and therapy. If you do something that's uncomfortable in an environment that's being held, not so say you do something uncomfortable. So I ask you, okay, come into the middle of the circle. So you do that. So your body's like, oh my God. Your brain's like, oh my God, I'm really uncomfortable. Oh, and then you're back on the outside of the circle again. So then your cells of your body get to relearn what it is to be safe. So I was uncomfortable. I went into the middle of the circle, uncomfortable. I did it. I came back to the outside of the circle. Whew, I did it. I survived. So we get to reprogram our nervous system and our cells to understand that this is not,
just for the example of having a childhood trauma, this is not when I was 5 and I fell off my bike and my mom wasn't there or whatever, obviously that, something that happens. So it's this slow progression of rebuilding. And like I said with Kathy, like, don't mess with me. But it took years for her to feel supported in the beat enough to say, whew, and to feel supported enough in that circle to step in and to feel something. So I don't know if I rambled off there.
No, that, I think it really is kind of a yoga in some sense, that we're kind of stretching, opening our bodies and also opening our hearts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely a heart opening can happen. And of course, when we open our hearts, there's pain. It hurts to open our heart. And so I do trust that joy and despair live right next door to each other. It's the same coin. And that to feel real joy, you do need to feel your despair. You do need to feel the discomfort. And to survive despair, sadness, whatever it is, you need to have a good understanding of joy. Mm-hmm. And so we have to find ways to tap into that joy. And for me, the group movement is where it's at. And then one more thing about science, and what we use in danceability, this mimicking thing. So the scientists have said that when we move together, doing the same movement to the same beat, our heart rates align, right? So got that your heart rates align with the group. And when your heart rates align, things like cooperation, connection, love, joy, all these things are released. Mm-hmm. And so it's like taking a huge dose of amazing medicine, and then you go back out into the world and you're like, right, I'm connected. I'm part of the bigger circle. We are actually truly one.
That sounds like the perfect medicine for COVID. So, thank you so much, Shauna. This has been a great conversation, and I hope to get you back sometime. And for people that want to learn more about danceability or your work, how can they be in touch?
Great. Well, danceability.com. And of course, on social media as well, danceability on Instagram and Facebook. And then shaunadevlin.net is my connection. And I do want to just say one quick thing about COVID is there is multiple online offerings, and that people that are offering online stuff have worked really hard to make it digestible, because it is challenging being on Zoom or live streaming or whatever the platform is. But I do encourage people to try and then let it all fall apart and then try again, because your internet will crash, or things will happen, or the presenter will mess up. But just trusting that all these online offerings are an effort to connect through a hard time. And we are blessed to have the technology that does that. So I do recommend trying.
Well, thank you again, and stay well and keep dancing.
Thanks, Silas. Okay, bye everyone.
I have to say that Shauna's enthusiasm for dance is totally infectious, and it was really great to explore some of the dimensions of conscious dance that don't often get talked about. If you want to learn more about Shauna's work, you can go to danceability.com, or I'll also post some links in the show notes at awakenrelationship.com. So I want to ask a favor. If you found some value or inspiration in this episode, I'd super appreciate a review on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps me to kind of reach a wider audience and keep doing what I do. Thank you for that. And just to let you know, I'll be hosting some free webinars this fall and winter, all around the subject of connecting during COVID. If you want to find out more about that, you can sign up for the newsletter or follow me on the socials, Instagram and Twitter. Thank you, friends, for tuning in. And till next time, keep dancing and stay connected.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Awake in Relationship. If you liked what you heard, please click subscribe to get the latest show delivered fresh to your device, or sign up for our newsletter at awakeinrelationship.com. Sharing is caring.